Welcome back to Carinine. We're sharing a discussion of the economy for last year, 2014, but we were looking first at our major industry, the tourism industry, and suggesting, first of all, the need for us to focus more intentionally on the development of Bahamian tourism, that is, facilities owned and operated by Bahamians, and to give that the attention that it so rightly deserves. But in addition to that, it does seem to me that we have to examine also the real jobs that are available in the tourism industry. Because when we look at this brain drain and the increasing number of qualified Bahamians who say there's no need to come home because there's nothing here for us to do. The emphasis has been on the sort of the domestic side of tourism jobs, so the waiters and persons, but the jobs in administration and higher up the ladder seem to be very limited. We used to have several Bahamian managers, no longer. All the managers are foreign.
That's right.
But we do have some Bahamians in administration. But it does seem to me that if tourism is our major industry, which it is, tourism should be providing more jobs for our qualified people.
Well, I think that it's very strange that in 2015 we seem to have fewer persons in management positions, real management positions, than we did when I was growing up as a child. I remember while growing up, you had persons like Brendan Folks and Robert Sands, and Kelvin Leach, and others who were in a very substantial leadership management roles in our major in our major properties. Today, it appears as though we've moved away from that and have surrendered the top positions to non-Bahamians. And whilst you can understand that the shareholders of these properties would want to make certain that the people who are there represent their interests, I'm not sure that if they're mutually exclusive. I think that through exchange programs, you can send, and I know that Sandy Sands, for example, spent time in Jamaica, he spent time in Guyana at Pegasus.
At the Pegasus,
and
also
I know Brendan
at the
Folks.
hotel in Kingston.
Exactly, Brendan Folks did the same thing in Bermuda, learning tourism, in Bermudan tourism. And so I'm not sure that we are doing that as much today as we did before.
But it doesn't seem as if we're doing very much in that area, because looking from the outside, it looks as if when we invite the foreigners to come in, we almost give them carte blanche in terms of that aspect of the business. And it seems to me that the government must lay down certain principles that you must train and Bahamians must become involved. Because you go to other countries and they are there. The local people are involved, and it's not just foreign dominated in terms of the administrative aspect.
Sure. I notice, I notice one exception, of course, and that is Sandals. The Sandals property has been extremely cosmopolitan in its approach to training Bahamians. I've been to Sandals in Jamaica, in Turks and Caicos, Exuma, and New Providence. And I must say that Butch Stewart has found a formula to make certain that Bahamians are moved around. And these are in senior positions. I was surprised that when I was in Turks and Caicos a few months ago, I was accosted by no less than a half a dozen Bahamians, and in senior positions. And I'm told that is the formula that he uses for his hotels, and what that does is that it provides a greater opportunity for managers to be able to appreciate what is going on in the various properties. In addition to which, I was able to contact someone here at Sandals and be able to get in touch with Bahamians at other properties around the Caribbean. And so I think the Sandals approach certainly seems to be a workable one. But again, the question is, how many Sandals properties are there? What I would like to see in the fullness of time is more Bahamians owning properties like Sandals. I think that is really what needs to happen. Is we have outstanding properties in North Eleuthera. on Harbor Island.
Yeah.
All of which are most of which are foreign owned.
Foreign owned, yeah.
The more successful ones certainly are foreign owned because they've got the capital, they've got the expertise, they've got the ability to throw the capital behind the to building their establishments. And so increasingly, if Bahamians are going to get into this area, and I think we have to, because this is really the mainstay of our economy, we need to have a more definitive focus placed on how do we get Bahamians from the position of employee to employer, to owner of hotels.
And I think that there must be a push from the government side.
No question about it.
To make this a matter of policy.
That's right.
Because I think we must not allow the foreign investor to feel that he's doing us a favor.
That's right, yep.
Because they come here to make money, and we have to insist that it has to be made under certain terms and conditions so that Bahamians benefit.
Sure. And I think we also need to be careful about, and I think I've had this, I know I had this conversation in the past in my column in connection with who do we allow to own resorts, major tourism resorts. I am not sure, as a matter of public policy, that we ought to be going down the road of allowing foreign governments to own our major tourism resort.
I read that article.
That is the one particularly relating to Bahama and the Chinese investment there. And again, we see that's going to filter over or spill over now into British Colonial, which is going again to be owned by a Chinese state entity.
A state entity, yes. Not just Chinese, but actually
a state entity.
A state entity.
Exactly. It would be different if it were a Chinese entrepreneur, private sector entrepreneur coming in. But again, do we want to have a foreign government own the largest segment of our economy, the largest segment of our biggest sector of the economy, i.e. tourism? I don't think that's a healthy thing.
It is not healthy at all. But in terms of the way forward, we have to emphasize, first of all, that we have to work at producing a much larger sleepover, stopover.
Absolutely.
If the tourism product is to really advance.
That's right.
And that has to be basic. And it seems to me that the Ministry of Tourism must be mandated to come up with strategies to work on to make that a reality.
Well, I think that's working, and I think it's happening. I'll tell you why. First of all, there's the question arises as to whether or not the Paradise Island property and the Cable Beach property can coexist, and in a competitive environment. And will they cannibalize each other? I think that the Ministry of Tourism is working extremely hard to improve airlift from various places to Nassau, to Grand Bahama, to the Family Islands. You have direct flights now from Florida to Eleuthera and to Exuma, to Andros and so forth. And I think that is really what the key is to get airlift. Once the airlift can be obtained, then people will be able to get to the islands without having to come through New Providence. And I think that's a major disincentive. And I believe that the Ministry of Tourism, I know the Minister has been working very hard to bring new airlines to the country. And I would not at all be surprised, although I don't know this, I would be very surprised if the reason that the Minister of Tourism is now on the trip to China is to encourage the Chinese to provide more airlift to the Bahamas, which makes a lot of sense. They've invested in this property. It makes a whole lot of sense for them to support it as best they can.
And they have the wherewithal.
Absolutely.
So that should not be an issue.
Yes.
But when we turn from tourism and looked at financial services, which it seems to me to have still has a question mark in terms of
where we're going.
Where we're going. Is there a future for that?
Sure. And I think the answer is yes. The short answer is yes, there's a real future for financial services in the Bahamas. The long answer is that much is going to have to be done over the course of the next 2 to 3 years in order to catch up with the rest of the world. And what do I mean by that? Over the past 2 years, the European Union, countries of the European Union, principally France, Germany, Italy, principally those 3 countries, have recognized that because they are losing so much money from their citizens who are taking money out of the country and putting into Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Their deficits are increasing, their national debt is increasing. And so what they have sought to do in unison is to provide an incentive for Switzerland to an incentive and also a punitive action actually is for those persons who have monies in Swiss banks to, one, declare them, provide a moratorium period where they will not be taxed on them, but three, bring them back home. Okay, and so what the countries are trying to do is to bring that money back into their under their control and into their banking system, into their economy to help grow their economy. What that has done is that it's caused a certain level of destabilization of the financial services market in Europe. What has happened in tandem with that is that the United States under President Obama passed this law called FATCA. And FATCA essentially says, okay, we've got a lot of Americans who've got money all over the world, and they're going to have to now disclose them. Many of those persons have moved their money out of the United States because there was no disclosure requirement, and they didn't have to pay taxes on them. And so what we see is that all the governments, the major governments of the world, are tightening the noose on persons who have money offshore to bring them back on shore, or to pay the taxes on them if they don't bring them back on shore. Now, what does that mean to the Bahamas? It means that a lot of the reasons for the banks being here, for foreign banks being here, the Swiss banks being here, some of the French banks being here, the German banks and others being here, their reason for being here will wane, will decrease. Because if these kinds of impositions are being placed on the banks to move the money back, or for persons to fully disclose, then people are going to say, well, I might as well keep the money in my own country, where I'm going to have to pay the taxes in any event. And so what's the purpose of having them offshore? As a result, what has happened is that a number of the banks, UBS, Credit Suisse, some of the very large European banks, Swiss banks in particular, have been fined billions of dollars by the United States government, and being threatened to be fined by the local government, by the country government, country in which they where their residents have funds. It's shifted the whole focus of tax havens. There are no more tax havens. We used to be a tax haven. Then tax haven became an unglorious, it was not an attractive term, and so we call ourselves offshore financial centers. And so that now has taken on somewhat of a negative connotation. And so what is happening is that banks today in the Bahamas, offshore banks, are finding it very, very difficult to deal with persons who have funds from Europe and who have funds from the United States. What it means is that much of the attention for financial services has shifted south to South America, because those countries have not yet passed the kind of competing legislation that will as the other countries have. And so what it means is that it's putting tremendous pressure on our banking system here, offshore banking system. It's putting pressure on banks keeping or retaining the persons who've been working at those banks for many, many years, many decades. And so you've seen that Credit Suisse, UBS, and other offshore banks have been laying people off, and more is to come. And so until and unless we are able to redefine the banking products that we are going to be able to sell to the world that fall within the framework, or that do not fall within the framework of things that are not considered unacceptable,
or as tax
evasion, or money laundering related. Until we are able to do that, we're going to see an adjustment in the system, and we're going to see more fallout from the offshore banks. Now, that's going to be.
Could we just wait a minute and take our next break, and then we'll come back to that?
Sure.